am Weird Heather and welcome to my seed starting video. So of the things I have to decide what I want to sow, I've got sunflower, little Dorit. This is an F1 variety. It doesn't produce pollen. You can't breed from it unless you have some other kinds of pollen. But it does produce a nice yellow sunflower, so may as well chuck that in the mix. I have mustard, Southern Giant. This says that it's very hardy, so that's great. I could maybe plant it along with all my kales outside over winter. And it's just nice to have some greens in winter. I've got some soapwort from a company called Heirloom and Perennial. They sell a lot of things on Amazon. Never used them before, don't know what they're like, but they do have a few interesting packets of seeds. So if these germinate and grow to my satisfaction, then I may well be buying a few more from them. I've got Chinese kale, which is weird. I think you kind of eat it for the stem more than anything. It says it's fast growing, so let's see if it's right. Bok Choy. I've never actually tried this, to be honest. I like the shape it grows in, so hopefully it tastes good. So you can have it in stir fries and stuff, so I'd imagine it'd be nice wilted down in the same way that kale is. Feverfew. Now, I actually forgot I had this. I like it because it both looks like a daisy, which I love daisy flowers, but also you can use it to make a herbal remedy to treat migraines, which I don't get migraines all the time, but when I do, it really hurts and I hate it. And a lot of the time, conventional painkillers just don't work. It's nice to have a little herbal thing in your arsenal that could help with that. Got oregano. My feeling is that this is going to be one of those slow growing things like rosemary. So I can probably have this on inside on the windowsill and then just stick it outside next year, and it's not going to take up like a whole lot of space. I'm not super into it as a herb. I can always just like grow it and dry it and then stick it in the mixed herbs sort of blend. I like to sprinkle those on roast potatoes. It tastes, oh my God, it tastes amazing. Sweet marjoram. I don't think I've ever tried this, so it would be interesting just to see what that tastes like. Coriander, essential for when my partner makes his salsa thing that I really like. Good for making guacamole and for sprinkling on the top of curries and stuff like that as well. You can also use the seeds. Mostly I just, use leaves, but if I got the seeds, then why not? Dill, good for fish. The reason I got interested in dill was I heard it repels cabbage white butterflies, and those things, they are complete menace when I'm trying to grow kale. Thyme. I have a lot of thyme. I have the seeds. It's another slow growing one, so stick that in the soil. I have some garlic chives. The last time I tried to grow this, it did not really work out too well. One seed sprouted and it very quickly got taken over by the lemon balm, which I planted over the top of it because I thought it wasn't growing. Catmint. I'm not entirely convinced that I haven't got this already as a volunteer in my garden, because there's something that has very mint-esque leaves and it has a similar scent to mint, but not quite. So it might be this, but my cat likes it and I love my cat, so growing that. And this was what I saw originally and wanted to grow. This all came after. Bright Lights, Chard. This looks really beautiful. I keep buying it at the supermarket and I put it in salads personally. Some people wouldn't like it. They'd think it's too tough to really put in salads, and they would stir fry it, which you can do. And I like that it's pretty colours, and I like having different colours in my salads because it makes it look just more attractive, and it makes me want to eat it more. So I'll be growing this too. First up will be catnip, which I'm planting all the way down there in that corner. Oh, it appears I've actually saved my own seeds from that at some point, because what I do, I like the pictures, so it's just easy to identify what the seeds are at any given time. So what I do, if I save any from my own, I'll put them in a little plastic bag like that, and I'll stick it in the original seed packet. So that way I have the picture to easily identify it at a glance. And I also have my own saved seeds, which tend to grow better than shop bought anyway. I am going to sow quite a lot, because I tend to keep my seeds for quite a while, because I don't have a big garden. Typically I have a lot more seeds than I could plant in one go, so I often have the same seeds for like a few years. And seeds germinate less well over time, so if I oversow, then it means that there's a better chance that some are going to actually germinate. And I like to think that I'm naturally selecting for plants that produce seeds that last longer. See, selection is a process by which you take the plants that you like the best for whatever reason, whether it's flavour, size, shape, colour, or seeds lasting for the longest length of time. And then you take those seeds and plant those. And the theory is that over time, you end up with a better strain of plants. And I don't know if the length of time a seed will last is something that you can pass down in genetics, but if it is, I figure I'm just naturally selecting for it, because all the seeds that don't last that long will be dead already and won't germinate, whereas the seeds that do have the genes, if those genes exist, for being able to survive for long periods, then yeah, I'm just automatically selecting for them, just because I tend to keep seeds for years. It does, for the most part, take me years to get through a packet, depending on what it is. So yeah, that's a selection for you and catnip done. Let's see what's next. Okay, next up we have garlic chives. Now these chives, in fact all alliums really, they are pretty slow to germinate. And I'm not a patient person, so I'm very quick to just assume that it's not going to grow. So I do unhelpful things like stop watering it, because I'm like, well, it's not growing anyway. And these were my seeds that I bought from America, because they had a end of season sale that was selling off all their seeds like cheap. So, and garlic chives was something I'd wanted anyway. So these seeds will not be best adapted for the UK climate, given that I bought them in Florida, which has a very different climate to here. But if I can actually get some of them to germinate, then obviously they will get used to UK conditions eventually, through a few generations. So, just a note about the soil, this is pre-watered. When you are seed sowing, especially when you are surface sowing, it's best to pre-water it so that it's already nice and moist. You don't want it super wet, because that's just going to cause things to rot. But you want it like nice and moist. Now, a lot of seeds I just surface sow, but the bigger seeds, like those chive seeds, I just tend to cover a little bit. Because really small seeds like poppy seeds, you can surface sow those and sunlight actually helps them to germinate. But bigger seeds like the chive seeds, I found they tend to rot if you just leave them on the surface. So typically I just cover them very lightly. So what do we have next? We have thyme. So we will stick the little marker in there for thyme. Now thyme is one of those quite small seeds that I was talking about. Which, can you see all these like teeny weeny seeds that have fallen into the bottom of this bag? Can you see? Now these are the kind of seeds that I will just surface sow, because if you don't and if you cover them, you sort of run the risk, because they're so tiny, that you're going to plant them. It's so easy to just plant them too deep and then they just will never grow. Plus so many of them, because they are tiny, need sunlight to germinate. So what I usually do, I take a decent sprinkle and just surface sow it all over the top, because that way obviously I'm helping to correct for any seeds that, given the length of time I've had them, the germination has gone down. And up next we have dill. This seems to be ending up as my little herb end. So dill seeds kind of look like that. So I would just sprinkle a little sprinkle on the top, but then these ones are big enough that I would put a light sprinkling of soil on top of them, just to prevent them from damping off and rotting off. Just press them gently into the top and just give them a little sprinkle of soil just to sort of cover them just very lightly. There we go. So next up we have coriander. Now this is another one that I've actually got my own seed already saved for this, but the one I had from the shop is the oldest, so I'm going to be using that today. If you have a look, the sow by date was actually 2014, but I don't tend to listen all that much to sow by dates. It says 2014. Some of these will probably still grow. I mean, when I look at sow by dates, I look at it as an indicator of which seeds I should use first. Whichever sow by date comes first, those are the seeds I use first. So these are your coriander seeds, which you may recognise because obviously they have them in the herb section in supermarkets. So I'm just going to sow all of these and hope for the best. I mean, they'll be doing well if some of them germinate, because I mean, they're supposed to be sowed by 2014. What year is it now? 2021. How many years is that? It's like 7 years, isn't it? Yeah, 7 years after it's sow by date, and I am actually finally sowing the last of them. This is what I mean about I naturally select for the seeds that have a better shelf life and survive the longest off of the plant, because it is not unusual for 7 years later for me to still be planting seeds from a packet that I bought with a sow by date of 2014. So wow. I mean, typically when you buy seeds, they usually give a sow by date of like 3 years from the date it was packed. So these were probably packed in like 2011. So I probably bought these 10 years ago. Which just goes to show how long I usually have seeds lying around for. Again, these are ones that I would sprinkle some soil on top, because coriander seeds are quite big seeds, really. So next up we have the sweet marjoram that I have never actually tried before. So I hope it's nice. This is the good thing about herbs. Like, even if you don't, you know, you're not super into that particular herb, you can still just cut it and dry it and then put it in like a mixed Italian blend and then just sprinkle it on pizzas and, you know, in pasta sauces and stuff like that. Now these are tiny, tiny little seeds, kind of like poppy seeds really. So I'm just going to be surface sowing these. I'm not going to be covering them up at all. These should germinate fairly well because they are fresh seed. There we go. By the way, I know I keep mentioning these herb blends. For anyone wondering, well, how do you go about making these herb blends? Basically, all you do is you cut off the herbs, whichever herb it is that you want to dry. You submerge it in water for 10 to 15 minutes just to drown any insects that are on there, because trust me, they are there and they're really good at hiding. I discovered this once when I made a cup of fresh peppermint tea, had a look at it, I was like, that doesn't have any bugs on. And I continued to believe that until I'd nearly finished my tea, and then I noticed all the aphids swimming at the bottom that had drowned. So believe me when I say submerging your herbs in water for 15 minutes before you dry them is a good way to kill bugs. After you've done that, I basically leave them to dry on my dish drainer. Once they're dried, then I put them in one of those mesh bags that you can now buy at all the supermarkets to put your vegetables in. You know, that you have instead of those plastic bags they used to use. I then hang that up in my kitchen and wait for the leaves to dry. Once they are fully dry and crumble under your fingers, that is when it's good to basically take out the stems, because typically they don't add much in the way of flavour, and discard those. And the leaves, you basically just throw those into a jar and then label it with, you know, whatever it is, whether it's mint, Italian herb blend, whatever it is that you like. So next up we have Greek oregano. See, this is another one that I would just put in an Italian herbs blend. It's a little too earthy. Oh, seeds smell good. Do you want to smell? All right, you can't. Never mind. This is another one that has like teeny tiny seeds. Just sprinkle them on. My mum used to really like this herb. I'm not super into it. It's too earthy in flavour for me to be like into it that much. Now rosemary, different story. I love rosemary. I use it to flavour water. I use it on, oh my gosh, on potatoes, roasted potatoes. So good. It's really so good. But oregano, this is going to end up in a herb blend for pizzas and pasta sauces and just all that kind of Italian good stuff. Next up, we have Feverfew, or my headache daisy. So again, these seeds, they are incredibly small. But then I suppose all daisy seeds are. Do you see those little tiny things there? They are actually the seeds. Because in daisies, do you see that yellow bit in the middle? Basically, that is a collection of thousands, well, maybe hundreds of tiny weeny little flowers that basically look like the middle of one big flower. And basically those teeny weeny grains, like if you look at it closely, it looks like a grain-like effect on the middle of that flower. each little grain is like its own individual flower and will make its own individual seeds that will look tiny, just like these ones do. You always have to be careful with daisy seeds, because if you sneeze at the wrong time or like breathe too close to them, you will just send them all over your carpet, and then that's all your seeds gone. Now this next up is soapwort. It says that it germinates best if given a short cold stratification. Basically what cold stratification is when well, in nature you would let your seeds lie out in the cold, they would freeze a little, and that helps them to germinate. But obviously in modern day times we don't always want to wait and do that, and so basically you can get around it by just putting it in the fridge, leaving it for a few weeks, and then bringing it back out again, and that makes the seed think, oh, I've had cold weather, it must be winter, and then it'll just germinate. I have not done that, so yeah, I'm just going to hope for the best. If it fails and these don't germinate, I can always put them in the fridge and then try again in a few weeks. How inconvenient. This label that they put on with all the instructions on how to grow it, they put it over the edges of the packet. So in order to get into the packet, I need to destroy the instructions. It is not helpful. Let's see if I can peel the label off. Why would you do that? Yes, I am in. And I still have my instruction label reasonably intact. Hooray. So this is soapwort seeds. It actually grows a plant that, it's called soapwort because they used to use it to make soap. The seeds are of a big enough size that I'm probably going to cover these. I'm going to sow quite thickly just because you're supposed to cold stratify them, and I have not done so. I've also never grown it before, so I don't know how easy or difficult it will be to actually get to germinate. Some things for whatever reason, I always seem to struggle to get them to grow, like poppy seeds. I always need to plant loads to actually get any poppies from them. Don't know why that is. And yet some things germinate so easily, like beans. Or like cornflowers. Cornflowers germinate really easily for me. Right, there we go. Covered those loosely. So next up we have the Bok Choy. There's something just about the shape of this that really pleases me. It's kind of like corn in that regard, because part of the joy of growing corn for me is there's just something about the shape of it, the way it grows, that's just really pleasing to me. I get all excited now when I see it in the farmer's fields, because obviously having grown it myself, I now recognise it as a crop. So we'll be passing a field with a load of corn growing in. I'll be like pointing it out to my partner excitedly going, look, that farmer's growing corn. Because stuff like this does excite me. And obviously his eyes are on the road, so he just does not care. He's just like, oh yeah, great. So these are about the size of mustard seeds. So I would cover these a little. I'm not going to sow this super heavily. And if a few of them germinate, what I will probably do is separate them out and then grow them on as like separate plants. So next up we have the allegedly fast-growing Chinese kale. Last time I tried to grow this, I was not successful. So, I mean, I might be this time. You never know. Could be. Again, the kale end seeds look very much like mustard seeds. and like the Bok Choy seeds. It seems a lot of the oriental vegetables sort of have seeds like this. I planted some salad seeds outside. It was an oriental leaf mix and they literally all had seeds like this. Now, because you sort of grow Chinese kale for the stem more than the leaves, obviously I'll be separating those out if more than one grow. Because it's very important if you are multi-sowing in the same cell, like I'm doing here, that if you want this to grow up to be big plants, then you need to be on the ball with separating them before they get too big, because otherwise all the roots get tangled together and they end up being very stunted and just not doing well at all. I know, because I have made this mistake. But yet, you can also do things in the other extreme, and you can try and separate them when they're like teeny seedlings and they're too small. And teeny seedlings do not do well with any kind of disruption. They just tend to pretty much be like, ow, bitch, and then just keel over and die. There's a middle ground, and I can't really explain when it is. It's just something you learn through experience. Next up, we have our Southern Giant mustard. I'm quite excited by the fact that this is both very hardy, so it'll grow all through winter and give me greens that aren't kale, but also the fact that it says giant. I'm intrigued to see how big it will get. And I'm also wondering, given that these all look pretty much like brassica seeds, although these do look like a slightly smaller version. I'm kind of wondering, are they going to produce like the bright yellow flowers in spring? The same way kale does when it bolts? Because I love that. Something I recently found out actually. You know when you see all the rape fields in spring? Like the farmer's fields, and they're all bright yellow because it's all flowering. I love that. I love driving past all those yellow fields, and it's just the most beautiful thing to me. And I found out recently that this thing, the rape that farmers grow to get rapeseed, well, I actually found out that rape is a type of kale. It's a type of Russian kale. And I found that out when I bought, I think it was a variety called White Russian, which is apparently rare. I've not seen it before. I've seen the red Russian kale, but not the White Russian, so I bought some. And it said it was a rape variety, or a Russian kale. And I was like, oh, so that's... So I was looking at kale fields all along, and I didn't even know. So I thought that was quite cool. So now we come to the rainbow chard. Now this is actually the same vegetable as beetroot, only, or at least it started that way. Only beetroots were selected over the years to grow a bigger root, and I just said it, I know what it is. And chard was selected to grow bigger leaves. And I've just split the packet open. Or down the side, wasn't that smart? Now these have like huge seeds. They kind of look like that. So what I will be doing, I will be multi-sowing these because the seeds are so big and easy to handle. They just look like that. I'll be sowing 3 in each cell. 1, 2, 3. Obviously with these being bigger ones, you do want to be covering them with soil, otherwise they will just rot on the surface. 1, 2, 3. You also, when you are multi-sowing, you want to make sure there's a little bit of distance in between the seeds, because it makes it easier to see what belongs to which plant, which helps when it comes to separating them out a little bit later. I do like rainbow chard. It looks so pretty. I've grown it for salad leaf before, but I didn't know it could get to the huge size it does until I saw it in the supermarket when it's been grown with adequate spacing, and it was like huge. Luckily, I have a bag to put these ones in, so it doesn't matter that I've just ripped the packet to pieces. I can just put it back in the little plastic bag and all is good with the world. And then last, but by no means least, we have the little Dorrit F1 sunflowers. They are a dwarf sunflower, so they won't get very big, but they will brighten up my windowsill a little. By some miracle, the seeds are still in date. So what I will do, I will probably sow 2 in each cell. Now, obviously most of you will know what sunflower seeds look like and will have tried growing them as a child, if not as an adult, but what I do is I plant them with the pointy end down. Or at least I do if I don't drop them and then lose them in the soil. Because when sunflowers grow, the shoot comes out at the pointy ends. So I figure it just helps them to have a better start if you plant them the right way up. So the shoot can just basically come out the point and go straight down, rather than planting it upside down and having the shoot have to go up and then down. I mean, it doesn't matter if you do plant it upside down. It will right itself and it will still grow. It's just I like to make it easier for the plant. I do love sunflowers. Before I got properly into gardening, sunflowers were like the only flower that I grew. Because believe it or not, there was a time I didn't really see the point of flowers. I didn't care about the bees. I didn't think they were beautiful. I saw the point of growing food because you can eat that. And I like to eat things. I get hungry, okay? But yeah, the only flower I could see any point in was sunflowers. They're the flowers of happiness to me. Whenever I see them, I always smile and it makes me feel happy inside. And I love it in autumn when you're walking around and you see all the sunflowers that have grown tall in people's gardens, and they're just so beautiful. And I love it this year that I decided to have sunflower year, and I planted a bunch of sunflowers in my garden, and I'm so excited for what that's going to look like in autumn when they all start to flower. So very excited. Now this flower it's dwarf, so you can have it on your windowsills, and it is pollen free. Now I bought this before I got into gardening and seed saving, so pollen didn't matter to me at the time. I was just like, oh, it's a sunflower, it'll grow on my windowsill. That was all I needed to know. Now I would not buy these again, because when it doesn't have pollen, that means that you can't fertilise it, and unless you have another sunflower that does have pollen, and you can cross-fertilise that way. And you can't save your own seeds and grow it again next year. However, this would be a great variety for you if you love sunflowers, you'd like to grow them inside and have them look all pretty on your windowsills, but maybe you have hay fever and you're allergic to the pollen. Or maybe you just don't want the pollen like getting on things and potentially staining it. So pollen-free varieties would be really good for you under those circumstances. For me though, I like to be able to save seeds, and to my knowledge, I'm not allergic to pollen, so I feel like this video is going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be really interesting to you, like sowing seeds with me and just listening to me talk about them all, or you'll have like turned off 20 seconds in because you found it really boring. So I guess we'll see on that one. But for those of you who did find it interesting and who stayed to the end, thank you. It's nice to have you with me, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.